Good morning. I'm Brijetti Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa, and welcome to the Water Forum. We seem to be having a bit of a technical glitch. We had issues with the internet part of the energy crisis we currently got. So we're trying to quickly see if we can get Benoit on the line. Can you give us a moment? We shall be back shortly. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Please be patient with us. We should be able to sort out the technical glitch shortly. We are working on that. It's just unfortunately one of those things that happen when you go live. And it seems like we've got Benoit with us now. So please give us a moment.
Hi, Brijetti.
Hi, Benoit. Good morning. Hi, everyone, and thank you for being patient with us. We have finally managed to sort out that technical glitch there. So welcome to the Water Forum. Welcome, Benoit. Great to have you on. We're talking about the Water Energy Nexus. And just to give anybody context that's not met you before, just tell us a little bit about your background before we dive into our topic.
Sorry, Brijetti, I didn't hear that.
Okay. So before we get started on our topic of the Water Energy Nexus, which is of interest to almost everyone these days, can you quickly tell us what your background is?
I'd like to say I'm an eternal optimist and environmental alchemist.
And you have roughly 30 years experience as a chemical engineer in different aspects of industry.
Yeah, that's getting closer to since we last spoke. It'll be 40 years next year of general environmental experience. I started off with polluted water treatments, industrial effluents, and moved into potable sewage, solid waste, and air pollution control.
Right. So let's just dive into our topic. We know we've all got issues with electricity at the moment, and therefore this topic is of interest to us all. What exactly is the energy water nexus? Can you quickly briefly explain that to us so that our listeners can understand for those of us who don't?
Sure. It's two parts of the water energy food nexus, which is one of the Millennium Sustainable Goals. Water and energy are intertwined to an extent that you cannot decouple them. Pre-industrial revolution or post-industrial revolution, and in actual fact, it's even more difficult now. So you need water to make energy, you need energy to get water around, so they're inextricably linked. And everybody is focusing on, and it's a global issue, on driving the energy requirements for the new middle class. And water's lagging behind because people, generally speaking, don't worry about it until the taps run dry or they go brown. So what, in the fourth industrial revolution, it's really a merging of everything we do. And I'm a great believer in that integrated solutions are the only sustainable way forward. So the water energy nexus, it's difficult to talk about either one. We have to talk about both. And I'm a firm believer that the issues we have in energy dwarf the water issues, and the third part, the food issues, because both of them affect our food security. And the meltdown that we're facing is extremely, extremely dire. And this is why we were in the presidency this week.
Yeah, I think it's beyond dire, because if we look at the backlash that we're currently seeing on social media from people, I mean, Eskom says that people should be off for a maximum of 2 to 4 hours. But I have seen reports of people being off for 4 hours at a time and up to 48 hours. So this is no longer a fleeting matter. And we're starting to see notices of businesses shutting down. This has got far-reaching effects. And so if one has to look at the energy water comparison, which one of the two would you say is worse, water, energy?
I think the consequence is that water will run out, and people are not being load shed for more than 2 to 3 hours from Eskom. I just wanted to add to that point is that Eskom, and draw the parallel in our water and energy architecture. Eskom is the bulk provider, and it's virtually the sole one, so has 90% of the market, has a monopoly on water, as Department of Water Sanitation, so DWS, as long, has in bulk water provision. So what's happening is, because the bulk water provider is melting down, not failing, it has failed, it's melting down, has less than half of its generation fleet available, and this has never happened in South Africa since pre-1900, when we first started building power stations, is that the infrastructure downstream, so transmission is not too bad, but the distribution, which is at local municipality level, is failing. And it's failing because it's not designed to be switched on and off is the first thing. And Ted Blom has elaborated it. But one thing we don't do anymore is maintain our transformers. And I used to be very involved in that in the 80s. And we used to maintain them annually. We used to take the oil out, filter it, and put it back in. And because that's not being done, the infrastructure is being ground down. So local municipalities, we know, are collapsing also. And it's all of the uni cities. It's not just one. And the small cities are very vulnerable. So what we're seeing now, people who don't have power for 8 hours, 12 or 48 hours, it's really the local distributor that has failed, because the supplier is in actual fact intoxicating them with a virus, if you put it into internet terms. So we have this viral thing happening. In the water sector, it's no different. We have this viral and bacterial contamination because sewage plants are failing pre-load shedding. Add load shedding to it, sewage plants don't work. They can't work because they need oxygen. They are aerobic, so they need air, not anaerobic. They need oxygen, and the oxygen is induced into the system for the bacteria to break down the pollution using electrical mixers and pumps to circulate and the likes. So what's happening is roughly 80% of our sewage is not treated in South Africa anymore. We are increasing that now to 100% virtually. So we are polluting ourselves, and we've got some nasty stuff in there because the bacteria we've got today and we had 50 years ago are different. The viruses are different, and none of our systems are in actual fact equipped in South Africa and mostly in the globe to cater for this meltdown. So to me, we have a, because we're not going to focus on food, but we will run out of food. So let's just remember that. So stocking up on water is not enough. But what we're doing is we're polluting our water resilience. So the energy, water, both of them are state failure issues. And everybody's talking about energy, but water is in actual fact silently polluting us. And that is going to affect us maybe 5-10 years later. We will run out of water probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks at the current rate, because the major water utilities can't pump water adequately to keep reservoirs full. So, I'd say both are as critical. Just what I'd like to raise from a public awareness perspective is that when you think of load shedding, think of water, energy load shedding, and food shedding arriving, or food rationing, coupons and all the likes. So if you like your burgers, enjoy them now.
Wow, it certainly is a bleak picture. I was thinking of the way that you were explaining why systems are breaking down. I just want to reiterate what you mentioned there because I see this a lot on social media as well. And thank you for raising that. So ESCOM, just to reiterate, ESCOM load sheds for 2 to 3 hours at a time. And so people that are off beyond that, it's not an ESCOM issue, it's a local municipality issue. And you link that through to the lack of maintenance. So what I'm seeing here is not just the lack of maintenance on the part of ESCOM, which they basically in their press conference admitted to. So we're looking at more than a decade of no maintenance on ESCOM's part. There's also no maintenance on the part of municipalities, both in water and in energy. And that paints a very, very bleak picture because you can only not do maintenance for so long.
Yes.
If we continue on this path now, I mean, there is, and also we know ESCOM's got no money. We know that municipalities have got no money. So where to from here? I mean, is it just all dark? Is there any way out? Is there any hope for us? What's your feeling on that?
Well, I've been prepared. I've been saying this for 20 years, and I was personally involved in the shutting down of the water sector. I was a reluctant participant, but it was government induced. And businesses also not come to the party by blaming government, etc. And there definitely is hope. And it's late in the day. It's a pity. We've got 10 million unemployed people, another 10 million who are under the poverty line. So that's 20 out of 60 million people. That could have been avoided. But pointing fingers, etc., is going to get us absolutely nowhere because we're going to fight amongst ourselves. And the last thing we need is a civil war because we'll land up like Mozambique, DRC, etc., as basket cases, unfortunately. And it's not the wealthy who suffer because the wealthy are mobile. So to me, there definitely is hope. And this is why we were at the PPGI, so the Public-Private Growth Initiative, which is a business-sponsored and initiated program by Dr. Johan van Zyl, who is the CEO of Toyota Europe, sits on the global board. And he doesn't have to do this, but he's a South African at heart. And he's seen that South African business has firstly been reluctant to take on government. We must remember, government has no money. Government represents us and uses the money we have generated through business and through taxes from business and ourselves and through levies and excise duties. So government is a vehicle that we control totally. And we have failed to control government. So we can't blame government, we must blame ourselves. We get the government we deserve. And that's not tongue-in-cheek. That is absolutely to the point as far as I'm concerned. So to get over this, because we can't carry on like this, to get over this, what we have to do is, unfortunately, the meltdown had to start before stakeholders, so I'm not saying just government, before stakeholders realize if we don't do anything, all of our equity is gone. And so Business South Africa sits on huge piles of money. 70% of the business through the Joburg Stock Exchange, I was told this week, is actually generated outside of South Africa. So just think about this. So we're a global economy. And so what we've said as business is that we need a fourth industrial revolution approach. Business must sort itself out, and we will force government to do what the country needs. Government does what we tell them to do. It's not the other way around. Okay, this is not a tribal fiefdom that we run here anymore. And that penny has dropped, and the people who initiated this with Rolf Meyer, who is well known and who is a good arbitrator and conciliation person, is that the session we had is water was missing out of all of this, believe it or not, and we picked it up and we presented our case, and it's taken us about a month to convince the stakeholders that water is important. Can you believe it? We had to convince stakeholders, so I'm talking about business and government, that water is the fundamental lubricant. I heard the just on an aside, and I thought it was funny, but it's very sad, is that the Banking Council of South Africa actually stating that money is the fundamental economic lubricant. I could not hold myself back, and we agreed that it isn't. Okay, water is. Okay, you don't need money as the basic human life. You need water. We can trade money.
Absolutely, and I know that Dr. Anthony Turton constantly reiterates the fact that water is an economic enabler. And unless we start seeing water as an economic enabler, we are in trouble. Without water, we can't do anything. We can have piles of money, but if there's no water, we can't run a business. We can't run the economy. We can't run our homes. We can't live.
Yeah. So this is why we're talking more and more, and I think it's starting to be accepted about the Water Energy Nexus. We're talking about water as the fundamental economic lubricant without excluding water. We need communications, we need roads, we need a whole lot of things. But water has now been raised as a national priority. So in other words, if we don't tick that box, nothing else will happen. So we've managed to get that penny to drop in business and government, okay? But the reality is government is in disarray and business is in disarray in a water perspective and in an energy perspective. But in water, it's far worse. And it's far worse because water is a nationalized resource, whereas energy is not. And that to me is the symptoms are the same in the meltdown, but the fundamental difference is that energy, the sun, cannot be nationalized. Water was nationalized, and I sit in the middle of the fence because there's pros and cons on nationalizing it. And the reason it was nationalized is because we have the scarcity paradigm, the Victorian outlook that water is just not available, etc. It's an old definition. So it's going to change with time as people accept that the circular economy, so things like the paradigm of abundance. And water, we cannot do anything with water without government's rubber stamp. With energy, we can go put solar PV, we can do a whole lot of things, we can put a windmill in the back garden, we can do a whole lot of things ourselves off grid. That to me is a very narrow, myopic look because the economy is melting down. The industry shuts down. You can have as many windmills and solar PV panels you want on your roof. You've got no business to do. So we have to look at things in a macro level. So energy is not nationalized. Water is nationalized because of
Benoit, I seem to have lost sound. Anyone who's watching us, can you please tell me in the comments? Okay, got you back. Got you back.
Good. I'm not too sure where I got lost though.
So a quick question, Benoit, with regards to, you were saying that we can do something with regards to energy, but we stumped with regards to water because basically DWS have got full control over the water resources. But now when it comes to energy, a quick question, what prevents local municipalities from providing energy if Eskom is in meltdown?
We have a legal system, so you cannot build up a wind farm. It's illegal. Okay. So the Department of Energy controls the energy distribution into the national grid and into the municipal grid. So local, provincial, and national government are controlled by the Ministry of Energy. That ministry allocates a percentage of energy that can be generated by IPPs, independent power producers, and that goes to the regulator, NERSA, and NERSA then allocates that. So government, although energy is not nationalized, so the sun's not, but the generation, transmission, distribution is nationalized and controlled by government between Eskom and local municipalities that control the grid. So municipalities are not allowed to generate electricity. Now, what people don't realize, Eskom was not built to provide cities with electricity. We need to take maybe 2, 3, 4 decades back. Eskom in 1913 or so was established to provide government and mines, so the high energy users, with electricity. That's why our cities and even our larger towns all had their own coal-fired power stations and some hydroelectric. What's happened in the last 25 years, and this is unfortunately the communistic collective philosophy, is that we have centralized everything. So Eskom has to be taken back and provide energy-intensive users within government, state-owned enterprises, and maybe mines, but we have to denationalize that grid. And the only way is to break up Eskom, and that's happening as we say, because Eskom will be broken up and Eskom will be privatized. and it's just a matter of how you package it to the unions and to other stakeholders. Is in the world this has happened. This is 100% predictable, but we've got to realize is that national control, governments are not good at handling money. They are there to manage the fiscus and security and nothing else. They are not good at doing it. And some governments have managed to do it and have gone through, let's say, the socialist agenda and gone back to capitalism. In South Africa, we're really not good at it. And we have this collective approach, which we have to break. So government has asked us, what must we do to get to 5% growth? And we said, well, from a water perspective, this is what we need to do, and this is what we're busy with working. And believe you me, government is not only going to listen to us, it's going to participate, and we are going to do it. Otherwise, we'll change the government. The government will change because people are hurtful in South African terms. So, we have to do it. So government has realized that they're starting to realize that they work for us and not the other way around, but also have realized, very importantly, that water is linked to energy and to the economy, and we have to raise its status for us to move forward. Having said that, it's going to take us 5 to 10 years to sort out this water energy nexus collapse. So there's no quick fixes, but we better start, and we are starting.
But Benoit, the system are we running a risk of the system breaking down as things stands now?
Are you asking about the energy system?
The energy system, yes, in particular, because I understand, I know that Eskom's saying that even at stage 4, they're in full control of the system and they are preventing the system from breaking down. And yes, I can understand that from Eskom's perspective, but from the perspective of the man in the street, us normal people having energy interruptions 3, 4, 5 times a day, as currently, is that a reason for us to panic?
Well, we need to panic, but we need to, when I say panic, we need to panic. So it needs to be a controlled panic, if that can exist. I know that's an oxymoron. Is that what we need to do is realize where the priorities are in our economy and our lives. So the economy is melting down. It has been for 10 years now. But now it's rapidly melting down. So what we have to do is Eskom, with the load shedding, they're in full control. So let's not say, and I had this thing with Cape Town, where Cape Town was in full control of the water. Okay. Eskom's in full control of the grid. So if the grid can provide, if the grid needs 30 gigawatts, 30,000 megawatts, 30 gigawatts, they need a reserve of 70 to 20%. So what's 20% of 3 is 6 gigawatts. So they can only provide 24. That 6 is your buffer capacity to ensure that your frequency remains at 50 hertz. They don't go below 49 and above 51. So that's the synchronization of the grid, and that's monitored by NERSA. That's the primary KPI in running a grid. It's not the voltage. It's to do with the frequency. The frequency is right. We've got 50 hertz at our plugs. We are okay. So what they do is, for example, the demand was 22 and they only had 18 available. So they went to stage 4. This is of the 48 installed gigawatts. What happens is they shut off the supply to the grid to make sure they don't supply more than 18. That's all they do. So Eskom, through the control center in Germison's at Simmerpan, is in complete control of the grid. What they're not in control of is a distribution municipality, where that is, municipalities decide which areas to cut off. So they say your main feed to the peninsula is cut off. You decide within, we've reduced it down to 50%. You decide who you cut off there. So the municipalities have full control of the distribution. Their hardware is failing because it's old, it's not properly maintained, and it's not designed ever to be switched on and off on a daily basis. It's designed to be switched on and off once or twice a year for maintenance. So what we're doing is we're running a system, like we're having water, a system is not designed the way it's supposed to be run. So the reason why the Eskom fleet is failing is that in the boiler tubes and the likes is no maintenance been done for 20 years. When I say none, very little. They call it run to fail. Okay, it was a joke within Eskom. So what's happening is the equipment, instead of being maintained now in summer for winter, has not been maintained, and we are running at 8,000 RPM, okay, in a car which is redlining it the whole time. Okay? The radiator's going now, The fuel we've been giving it is dirty, so the fuel filter is blocked. So in winter, we are going to have less eyesight. If we're running at 18, 20 gigawatts, we can have less than 10. So 3/4 of the country is going to be black 24/7 from winter. That's the way it's going right now. And that's from an Eskom perspective. The municipalities do not have the money to, we need about 150 billion to put the distribution grid back into where it needs to be. 150 billion. Water, we need 1,000 billion to put it where it needs to be. So water is far more serious. It's more than double what Eskom's debt is, just to put it into context. So having said that, we know where we're going is we have to change things. And to me, there's hope because we realize there's a problem. I know at Eskom and at the media briefings, they're playing poker with us, and but that's going to be sorted out, I believe, in the next week or two. But nothing has been done on the water side yet, because this week it was only acknowledged that water is in actual fact as important, if not more important, than energy. And the water architecture, because a nationalized resource, is far more complex. And we need to change that architecture. And the only way we can do that is acknowledge we have a problem. And secondly, we're going to have to change the whole legal framework. And that, unfortunately, you cannot do in less than 2 years. That's the way democracy works.
Yeah, very bleak picture. But just to reiterate again, so essentially when it comes to both water and energy, if you're not getting a supply, then it really is at the distribution point on municipal level and not higher up. So people that are without water or without energy for a prolonged period, it's no longer at national level, it's at local, regional level, and people should look to their local municipalities. And where municipalities have failed, which is happening rapidly all over the country, what can business do? Can they do anything?
Okay, so what we've said is, firstly, government, from a water perspective, needs R1 trillion investment to recapitalize, and this is a government number, to recapitalize the water sector. Business has said we have 3 trillion. So firstly, we've got money. So we've got that lubricant, okay? Second thing is, government said to us, what are your 3 biggest inhibitors, okay, to getting the money? Because we have the technology in South Africa and globally. So there's no issue there. Our capacity to implement these projects, where we short, we will bring in internationally. So there's no real issue there. It's the legislative framework that is incorrect. So the 3 billion, so people are going, we've got 3 times oversubscription on our water bonds, if you want to put it that way. So this is very fundable. But firstly, we need policy certainty. So what's wrong with your policy? So we're busy with it, and we're presenting on the 4th of April, we're presenting what the policy inhibitors are. Then we need regulatory certainty. So IPPs will not invest into the energy sector unless they've got policy certainty, so 10-year contract, they've got a sovereign bond to back it, and they've got an offtake from Eskom that is managed by NERSA, and the lenders put the money in. In water, we don't have that. So we don't have a regulator. Well, it's within government. You can't regulate what you're producing. And we know government has failed in that. It's accepted they've failed. So that's why we have the Independent Water Regulator project. And I think we might be able to expedite it somewhat now with the PPGI, in that whilst the policy has to be changed, and there's a lot of work that we need to do there, and we're going to find ways to accelerate it, the Independent Water Regulator, I believe, we can do it a lot quicker than the policy. And so what we're doing as business, we're saying is, we don't like this and that in your policy. What we don't like in the regulator is not independent, so we need independent. Yes, we do that. And also, we cannot contract, for example, with a local municipality where we will treat the sewage, and with the treated sewage that now complies, we'll supply industry with that water. So that we've got more water available from from our dams inland to supply potable water, so that we don't hock that. We need to stop the 41% leaks. To do that, we need to invest in the local municipality. So as a distributor, it is not bankable. So what do? We have to find a contracting mechanism, and we've got some high-powered guys who've worked on this, and so that we're able to contract. We have an independent regulator who will say this is a fair price for water based on international trends, local trends, so we don't pay for looting, we don't pay for leaks, unless they are below 25%, which is a global norm, so 41% we don't pay. Sort your house out. We ring fence those, the money comes in. So I have to add in, there's always a caveat to this, we have to do environmental impact assessments, and those take 2 years. So we will find a way that environmental impact assessments don't take 2 years, okay? People are telling me it's impossible. I love the impossible because we are doing the impossible in South Africa. So we've got a few major issues at a macro level that we are busy identifying, getting all stakeholders to agree, and it's going to be very difficult for government not to participate. And if we have an issue that is highly politicized, we will find ways of working around it, because believe you me, nobody in government or in business wants the country collapsed. We all have vested interest. So we've got quite a lot to do, but we have to change those inhibitors or those blockages, and there are huge, huge issues. But where there's will, we can sort them out. Whilst the energy is being sorted out, the water will be sorted out concurrently.
Benoit, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening. I think, the take home for me from this conversation is that, yes, we are in meltdown. Yes, a lot of it is because a lack of maintenance, both in energy and in water. But the good news is that we do have access to funding, that business can step up to the plate, provided that we have regulatory and legislative certainty and policy certainty. So it's not all bleak. There is some good news that the ship still can be turned around. And so we don't have to be too concerned that we'll have a complete meltdown of the system. There is a rescue plan.
Yes. So it's all decks on hand, and people tend to perform better under pressure. We have pressure, we will perform.
Benoit, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for staying with us, even though we had some technical glitches today. Unfortunately, one of those things when you are broadcasting live, and we are subject to the internet, which is subject to us having electricity. So life happens that way at the moment. Thanks for watching. Please share the broadcast, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Benoit.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.